Good morning. It is top of the hour. I want to welcome everyone for joining in today for Get the Spark, the author's live stream presentation. I'm really glad to have you with me today. It shows me that you're serious, not only in writing a book, but in making sure that it's done the right way. So your time is valuable and I appreciate it. I do know that if you're here today, it's because you felt that nudge to write a book. And I'll tell you right now, it can be hard work, but it can also be amazing work as you tackle each step and see your message evolve. And so I want to help you get started or get you closer to the finish line. So just so that you know you're in the right place, the information I'm sharing today will focus on nonfiction books. So these are topics such as how to do something like train for a marathon or how to save money on your taxes. It can be informational, such as 100 things to know before you sell your home. Or it can be inspirational or motivational, such as how I found a rewarding career at age 50. This information will help too if you want to write a fiction book such as sci-fi or romance, but it doesn't directly apply since we're going to be focusing on using the book as a business building tool so that you can add credibility, attract prospects, convert them into clients or followers, or leverage it for other opportunities such as speaking engagements. I want to take a minute to introduce myself. My name is Susan Sparks. My company is ASAP Writing Services. I'm a 2-time best-selling Amazon author. I've self-published 2 books and have been a contributor to 2 compilations. And I've written over a dozen other books for entrepreneurs, and I coach authors in writing and self-publishing their own books. Over the years, I've had many different jobs that related to writing, whether it was newspaper editor, I've been on-air radio news, Navy public affairs. One job in particular was for a speakers bureau in the Chicago area. We worked with a lot of big names, one of which was Og Mandino. We represented him exclusively. So if you remember him, he was a prolific author and an internationally known speaker. And that experience was my first encounter with a whole new world of speakers, most of whom were nonfiction authors as well. And so since 2010, I have been on my own writing content for others, including web pages, newsletters, blogs, sales letters, and as I mentioned, a lot of nonfiction books for business owners, entrepreneurs, professional speakers, and coaches. And in working with people over that time, I've found that there are some common sticking points. So I want to help you today on learning how to avoid those. So here's what we're going to cover today. First, it's not fear that keeps you stuck. And I'm going to teach you how to overcome that fear with something very simple. It's also that you don't have enough time or it's too overwhelming. So I'm going to help you learn how to structure your workflow so that you will have enough time. It's not that you're not creative enough. In fact, in the case of nonfiction how-to books, creativity should not even be at the front of your mind on that one. And then also how to avoid the author gap. And so that's what else should you be doing while you're writing a book. So we're going to get into that as well. So I know we all have fears or limiting beliefs, roadblocks, detours, whatever you want to call them. And I talk to people that are often working on their book, and it's like for a long time. And they go through this cycle of being all excited about it, and they work on it for a while, and then they kind of get stuck, and they put it away, and they think, what's the use? And then they talk to somebody else that is all excited because they're writing a book, so they pull theirs out and try to get motivated again. And it's like, well, why doesn't that motivation stick? So it's not motivation, it's not inspiration that you need. And we'll get into that in a minute. And I also know what it feels like to not have enough time. As business owners, we're trying to run our business. We need to network to get clients or customers. We need to keep tabs on the bottom line. And if you're smart enough to delegate some stuff out, then you've got to make sure they're doing their part. Then you have family and personal stuff. You know, you need to work out and eat right and get enough sleep. And now you want to add writing a book to the mix. I talked to one woman who said her husband was losing his patience with the time that she was devoting to writing her book. Well, it turned out that she'd been working on the book on and off for years, so you can understand why his support might be dwindling a little bit. But we're going to talk about how to get past that as well. And then there's the unknown. So it's easy to generalize it as writing a book. But when you break it down into steps, it's like so many. So you have your outline, you've got a first draft, you need to have, revise that, beta readers, you need a developmental editor, a line editor, you got to get it formatted, you need ISBN, you need to do some marketing, you got to publish it. So it's not as simple as writing and uploading, which some experts would lead you to believe. You may have even downloaded one of those, I call them a weekend book, where they wrote it, and then they kind of just put it up as an ebook in just a weekend. So as you start reading it, you notice a lot of errors and typos, and you find the content really isn't all that great. I'm not going to teach you how to do that today. I believe that a book is representative of you. Therefore, it needs to be as professionally polished as possible. And so I'll break down these areas and we'll have a good discussion on what you need to do. So we'll dive into overcoming fear. Fear and limiting beliefs, it gets a lot of attention these days, and it's no wonder because we all have something. It could be something like fear of flying or scared of spiders or hairless cats. Who knows why we have some of the quirky ones that we do. Well, we can all agree that fear, limiting beliefs, or even low confidence keeps us from pushing ourselves to accomplish something that we want to do. And that applies to writing as well. History is full of authors who wrote some pretty good stuff and they didn't really put it out there, and it gets discovered after they're dead. And then it becomes this popular book that really would have been beneficial to them had they still been alive. Many are names that we know. What you may not have known was that their work was not famous until after they died. So like Thoreau and Chaucer and Jane Austen, or even more modern authors such as Stieg Larsson. So fear and doubt can happen to just about anybody. But when I talk to authors that feel like they're stuck, it becomes pretty clear that part of what holds them back is fear. So they're either afraid of criticism or fear of exposing themselves in some way, fear of not knowing what the next step is, or even just afraid of, as the book gets closer to finished, it's going to be real, and now they have to get out there and do something with it. They have to promote it. And it's really easy and fun to tell people that you're writing a book because it sounds really noble and impressive. Writing a book seems to be on a lot of people's bucket lists. They just want to be able to say they've written a book, or they've heard for years their friends or colleagues have always said, oh, you need to write a book. Well, if it's a collection of stories about Uncle Fred, that's an entirely different thing. What we want to focus on, especially as an entrepreneur or a business owner, is that being an author really boosts your credibility as a subject matter expert. So even when you're very confident in your material and what you have, there's still some trepidation about creating a book. You may put all this work into it, nobody reads it, or it kind of flops. And so when you're not confident, excuse me, in your message, it's really easy to kind of let that fear start to take over a little bit. So what I want to do first is give you your first big nugget. I hope it will change your perception, because it's not about conquering fear at all. It's about implementing a strategy. A strategy is the most important part of your entire book writing activity. If you have a solid strategy before you write even that first word, it's the night and day difference between being that person who completes a book and the person that struggles for years to finish. So let's break down our strategy. The first part should be your book's purpose. Second is, how does that fit into your overall business plan? How will you connect with your readers? And how will you leverage the completed book to get the sales or customers that you want? There's a saying attributed to Abe Lincoln, although I did find out it wasn't true, but it's still good. And it's like, if I had 6 hours to chop down a tree, I'd spend 4 hours sharpening my axe. And as an author, you need a very sharp axe. When authors that I talk to are stuck, it doesn't take long to figure out that the only strategy they really had in mind was, they would just write the book, and then everything else would be this dreamy carpet ride, and people would discover it somehow magically, and they'd get rich and famous off of it. So that's where I kind of have to pull them back a little bit, and we stop and rebuild that foundation for their book, or we sharpen the axe. And the way I do that is we have to have a firm answer to one important question. And that is, what do you want your reader to do after reading your book? Okay, what do you want your reader to do after reading your book? Think about that. Not why are you writing a book, like to accomplish a goal or satisfy your ego or whatever reason you think you want to write a book. It's what do you want your reader to do after reading your book? This is the basis of your book's purpose. So there's no right or wrong answer here, but there must be an answer, because otherwise you're going to waste time and energy on something that you may never get finished. So are you writing just to say you accomplished a goal or to impress someone, or are you writing a book to educate your target market and bring them into your customer base? And so we have them do this exercise, which is a purpose statement. So my book is about blank for blank who are searching for blank to solve blank. And then once they read it, they will blank. So you may say you want to share your message to help others. Well, too broad, too, airy-fairy kind of thing. It needs to be much more concrete. I followed marketing expert Dan Kennedy for years. If you don't know Dan, he's a prolific copywriter. He created the infomercial for Proactive, and you can see how that blew up. He spent his entire career dissecting the psyche of the buyer and what compels them to buy. And the answer is really stunningly simple. They want a problem solved, a pain to be relieved, a desire quenched, or whatever. And a very simple but vivid example he uses is dog shampoo. So you have a nice mild dog shampoo. It might sell for like $6. So it's just plain old dog shampoo. But if you go narrow and more specific and say, for instance, it's dog shampoo for poodles, now you have the attention of a certain segment of the dog owning market. And these owners know exactly this is the one that they need, because it says right there on the label, it's poodle shampoo. And so you could sell that easily for $12 simply because it satisfies a niche. So start being aware of ways that products are created for a niche market. I was buying shampoo for humans myself recently, and every brand had several types, like fine hair and dry hair and such, but the ingredient list was nearly identical on all of them. Take soap. Won't soap clean everyone? Why is there Dove for men and Dove for women? What happens if a woman uses Dove for men instead? I think she'll still get clean. But when we are looking for something to fulfill a need, we look for confirmation that we are choosing the right thing. So labels such as these are the way a manufacturer assures us that we're making the right choice buying their product. And so that same mindset needs to transfer over to your reader. How will your book assure your reader that they're making the right choice by picking it? So we're going to go back to the purpose statement and refine it further. So the book is about a very narrow and specific topic for prospect, a client, a reader who are searching for what? A solution to solve their pain, their desire, etc. And then once they read it, they're going to take action. So let's say, for instance, my book is about sales techniques for people who are searching for ways to increase their income. And once they read it, they will be better salespeople. That's still extremely broad. So how can we narrow this down? So my book is about, we had sales techniques. Let's say, refine them further. It could be cold calling techniques. It could be online presentations or snail mail marketing. And you see now that we have a more of a defined niche and who that's for. So who is that? It could be first-time salespeople. It could be tech-savvy salespeople. It could be non-tech savvy salespeople, millennials, or red-headed ex-waitresses. Okay, so help your readers self-identify. Now, what are they searching for? So they're searching for a solution. Well, what might that be? Like a script that they could use? Is it an update to their selling vocabulary so they have the latest trendy terms? Is it the latest in apps to help them reach a customer? And then what is that solution going to provide? What's the benefit that they get out of that? Is it a faster way to close a sale? Will they make more sales? Or will it just give them a way to get past rejection and keep going? And then once they read it, what action will they take? So will they go out and break sales records and tell everyone to buy your book? Will they come into your sales coaching program? Will they buy another one of your books? So sharpen, sharpen, sharpen. Work on that purpose statement and keep revising it until you have a crystal clear concept. And so when you have that clear concept, you also have a clearly defined outcome. And I'll quote Dan Kennedy one more time. To loosely quote him, he said, "The book is a means to an end. And since it is a means to an end, the desired outcome has to govern everything leading up to that." So you're going to start with the outcome in mind, not one of these, just sit down and write a book. And as you write with that desired outcome in mind, you are deprived of creative liberty. And I think this is the most liberating and exciting part. There's no creativity required. And so before you gasp and think, oh my gosh, the book's going to be dull and boring, I'll stop you. Because when you have a clear purpose, a desired outcome, that's going to clear the way for the information to flow. It keeps you in the correct lane, and it helps you stay out of the weeds and on topic. And so you can take every paragraph, every chapter, and scrutinize it to see if it aligns with that desired outcome. And those sticking points start to melt away because now you're not trying to come up with ideas or crazy creative material. You've got an outcome in mind, and everything that you do is going to point to that. So I want to be clear here. The purpose statement is a building block for everything else that follows. So everything you do from this point needs to fit within that purpose statement. It makes your outline creation easier. I'm not going to go into a whole lot of outline at this point because that takes quite a bit of time as much as it does for the purpose statement. But rework your outline as many times to make it narrow. I provide a lot more on the outline training in my Publishing for Profit program, and I'll share a little more about that with you at the end. But when you have a solid purpose and a desired outcome, you can quell that inner apprehension. You know exactly where you're headed, what the message is, and who it's for. You eliminate the fear of no one reading it or liking it because you've identified exactly who the book is for. So if I haven't cured you yet of saying your book is for everyone, we're going to kill that idea right now, and that is by creating an avatar, which is a representation of your ideal reader. You want to use more detail, the better. If you've never done this exercise before, it's really eye-opening, and if you have done it before, I still think it's a great way to check in with yourself periodically to see if your ideal prospect is still who you think it is. So in creating an avatar, let's say you're a geeked out life coach who coaches senior citizens on adapting to retirement, and your book is going to be apps for senior citizens. So you will actually write a description of that purpose. Who's the reader? How old are they? Could be what state of health are they in? What do they struggle with? What do they like? What are their fears? What are their interests? There's so many variables that you can address that helps you envision this ideal reader or prospect or client, and that helps you speak directly to them. So number one, who is the reader? Is it an already tech-savvy senior who wants all the latest updates, or someone who flat out refuses to join the online world? Or is it the adult child of the senior who's struggling with helping their parent learn even just a little bit about the internet? So there's three distinct different readers in that example. And I know a lot of people are very hesitant to narrowly define their audience or their reader. They kind of balk at the idea. They think, well, everybody's going to read my book. My book's for everybody. And so I don't want to burst your bubble, but it may turn out to be for everybody, but it really strengthens your message. It helps you stay on topic and stay narrow when you really hone in on that. Remember our shampoo example, right? Narrow is best. It's easier for your readers to get your message, and it's much easier for you to write in the long run because you're not trying to please absolutely everybody. You're writing to this one person. So back to the example of the apps for seniors. Can you narrow it even further? Are they military veterans? Are they retirees looking for a new career? Are they widowed seniors looking to connect? There are limitless ways that you can identify that niche market and then speak directly to them. And what's important is because that potential reader has a big question, and that is, what's in it for me? So making sure that you've got this honed down, very narrow, very specific. And I would challenge you too, if you think you've already got one and it sounds pretty good, see if you can go back and, give the guy a name, give him, family, everything you can think of. I've even known people that have gone so far as to find a photograph, like in a magazine or online, of someone that represents that person that you're talking to. So when you're writing, you can kind of have that taped up somewhere on your wall or top of mind, so that it helps you remember, well, I'm writing to this person. And so if I'm getting offline a little bit, I need to bring my message back. So when you find yourself stuck with no real reason, review your avatar, ask yourself, how does all this align? Am I stuck because I've wandered off course? What's my desired outcome? Remind myself of the big question is, what do I want my reader to do after reading? And I know this step is frustrating for a lot of people because they're like go-getters and they're ready to dive in and get writing, and they just assume they'll figure it out as they go. But it's kind of like painting a room. A professional painter will tell you that the prep steps are actually more important than the actual painting. And if they didn't fill in the nail holes and patch all the dings and clean the wall, the new paint doesn't go on nearly as well. And again, it goes back to sharpening your axe. So sharpen that axe before you start to write. Just get sharp about the book's purpose, who the ideal reader is, and what you want your message and call to action to be. And if you've already started some content or you have an outline, I urge you to go back and look at what you have to see if that aligns. Okay, so now we have the real purpose for the book. And the second part of the strategy now is, how does this fit in your business plan? So being clear about your desired outcome includes knowing how this fits in the business plan. So the desired outcome and the avatar exercises are great on their own just to help you determine your target market and your message to them. That gives you a cohesive representation. But now you've got to know how this specifically fits. So say, for instance, if you're writing a book about sales techniques and you decide to use cartoon illustrations and you have a lot of humor and little funny stories, but that's not your true persona when you're in the rest of your business, then that's going to confuse your audience. If you provide IT services to medical facilities, for instance, and then you kind of write a book on how to hack personal data, well, then you're certainly not aligning the book's purpose with your plan to grow your IT business. So you may feel like you want to write something about forgiveness and love on one hand, but it's not going to promote your business as a fitness instructor, for instance. So make sure that they align with what you want this outcome to be. Your brand, or your brands in this case, your author brand and your business brand, they need to align. And so when you have a pretty established business brand, your author brand definitely becomes a little bit clearer and easier to bring that book within. So those are the first two parts: the book's purpose, how does it fit into your business plan? And next is, how are you going to find your readers? So I hope by now you see it's important to have a strategy and how those steps can eliminate your fear of being an author. So it's simply a matter of covering all your bases before you begin. I have some clients, they have the book and then they get tripped up on these last two parts of the strategy. So again, they get so focused on the book, which in a lot of people's mind means I'm going to sit down, I'm going to write it beginning to end. And then they don't think about the steps that follow. And finding readers is a huge step in this process. So how are you going to do that? Well, it's not quite as hard as it sounds. You need to connect with them. So that means going above and beyond just writing a book for them. That may be where some of them first encounter you, but a good author brand creates a following. The days of having some publishing house find you and put you out on a worldwide author tour and book signings and promoting you, it just doesn't work that way anymore. In fact, publishers expect you to already have your audience or to have a good following before they're really kind of interested in looking at your work at all. So why not just do this all for yourself and keep everything? And we'll get into more of that on whether you self-publish or go with a publisher later on. But finding these readers, there's lots of forums, places that you can promote your ideas and start talking, sharing snippets of your book here to get some interest going before. This is a great way to start creating excitement before the book is even finished. So make sure your social medias embodies your author brand, and part of your customer avatar means you know where your people hang out. Are they on Facebook? Are they more Twitter? Are they a LinkedIn audience? Be sure that you know where they are. Don't feel like you have to be everywhere, because number one, that can be overwhelming and a huge time commitment for that. So just pick one, start to get familiar with it, follow authors or speakers who are in that similar subject matter so that you can see how they promote and how they interact with their audience. And start making some comments, but please, whatever you do not just start jumping in and promote your book everywhere, right? I mean, social media etiquette is like another huge topic on its own, but for today, let's just keep in mind it's going to play a big role in your book strategy, and we'll get to connecting with them a little later on. The final part of this strategy, number 4, is how will you leverage the book to get the sales or customers that you want? There are so many ways to repurpose your content, and you've probably heard that phrase a lot from various channels. So are you going to use your book as a giveaway item to bring prospects into your funnel? Are you going to be using it as an incentive for group presentations? If someone hires you to come speak, will you get a copy of the book to everyone? Or is it an introductory piece so people can learn about your services? If you go to all this trouble to write a book and then you just end up with a couple hundred sitting in your spare closet hoping you make a little money, I've got some sad news for you. That's not going to make you much money at all. But when you leverage your book as a sales tool or a business builder, that's going to bring you so much more income. And so that $10 book may get you a $10,000 client. So let's remember what your desired outcome, what do you want the reader to do after reading your book? If it's to call you up and say, I need you to come work for me, or I have work for you to do for me, or I want to buy your product because it's awesome, I read about it, then that's our desired outcome. All right, so we've spent a lot of time on eliminating fear by creating the strategy. So really, what is there to be fearful of now? There's no need to be afraid that people won't like your book, because you know exactly who they are, and that they will like your book because it solves a problem for them. You won't be afraid of being stuck with a couple hundred copies in your closet, because you know where your reader hangs out and how to reach them, and you know what their pain points are, right? And you know how you're going to use your book as a business building tool. So let's tackle time. I don't have time, right? We say it every day. There just doesn't seem to be time to get everything done. So how do you fit in writing? When you think of writing a book, do you envision yourself, you got to squirrel yourself away in the attic late at night, tapping away at the keyboard, right? Do you think you have to sequester yourself in order to concentrate or be creative? Remember, when we have a clear purpose and desired outcome, you don't have to be creative. Or do you think it's going to take a lot of time because you struggle as a writer based on your 7th grade English class experience? So there's a lot of ways around that. Like the story I started in the opening, this one woman's husband was really frustrated with her trying to write a book. She had been off and on for years, and at first he was very supportive and understanding, and so they gave up some of their social activities so that she could spend time at night writing after working all day. And she had this mistaken notion that in order to be disciplined, she had to have 2 hours at least every time. So most of the time he was leaving her alone in the evening, and that started to put a strain on the relationship. And so she abandoned the project for a while. And then she'd get frustrated because she thought she really wanted to do this. So she'd start it up again, and then they'd kind of get tense and she'd stop. And so that pattern kept repeating itself. And by the fourth or fifth cycle of this, the husband's like, why don't you just give it up and move on? And so that really caused more tension because she wanted to accomplish that goal. So what would have helped? Well, first, if she had had a strong strategy, remember our book purpose, our desired outcome, the ideal reader, how she was going to use it in her business, I think that would have freed up a lot of her time that she's spent sitting and staring at a blank screen thinking she had to come up with something just fabulously creative. She wouldn't have to wait to feel inspired or creative to write her content because her outcome and the outline would define exactly where she needed to add that material. And then she could approach this as a business building tool, which really further defines the content. And fourth, this is another big sticking point, she could understand that every idea she had doesn't have to go in that first book. This is very common with a lot of writers because they're so excited to share everything. I'm trying to build myself up as a credibility expert, so I'm going to tell you everything I know, which is kind of like thinking everyone is my ideal reader. And so when we've already spent a lot of time talking about a narrow and specific topic for your book, so remember, think garden hose, not fire hose. Think of your book's content that way. Sometimes we call them rabbit trails or say you're in the weeds because you veered way off track with your message. Many times clients tell me all the things they want to include in a book. And then in fact, they have enough content is distinctly different enough content for like several books. And so we rush into it thinking we have to offer everything at once. So all those extra ideas can be saved in a file. I have one I call the incubator. And so they're good ideas and they can be some sort of information product, but just not right now while we're working on this one specific one. Okay, so we're going to tackle the actual part of making enough time. So if the idea of typing it out intimidates you, or maybe you feel you're not a good typist, you can use speak-to-text software or record your material, have someone else transcribe it for you. Or you can write it out by hand, or just go ahead and type it. This first draft is just that. It's a draft. A lot of people feel like they have to edit on the fly and go back, and that's not exactly right. What you need to do this first time through is just capture your content. You're not ready for critique at this point. You're just going to get all the material down. In fact, I label mine as chunk number 1 and chunk number 2 because sometimes I don't know where I want that to flow. So just kind of work on a topic, chunk it up, just get it all down, and you're going to go back and polish it later. So not the time to question whether a comma goes there or nitpick your grammar. Just get all the information down. And you'll find that if you can stop that editing as you go, you'll really make great progress. It doesn't have to be a perfect sentence the first time you write it. And especially if it's material that you already know and you've presented it many times, whether you did it in just talking with your clients or networking or blogging or a podcast or whatever, you can just let it flow because you know you're going to smooth it out later. So avoid the time traps, which I call them, which is working without a strategy. That would be staring at a blank screen, trying to wait for inspiration to strike, that stereotype of the sequestered author sitting and working late at night. Do not over-critique this first few times through. That's what polishing is for, and skip the editing on the fly. So find the fastest way to get the content down, whether you're recording it, typing it, writing it out by hand, because you'll need that, because we have one more sticking point, and that is the author gap. And that is not knowing what the next step is. When someone is so fixated on writing the book, and then they kind of look up once they're finished, and they probably for the first time in the whole process, they go, what's next? I wrote a book. How do I get it published? How am I going to get readers? Do I self-publish? Do I look for a publisher? What should I do now? And so getting all these other steps in order is going to take up a big chunk of time where you could have already had that book out going. So I don't want you to get discouraged by this picture, but self-publishing doesn't mean that you have to do all these things yourself, but it is important to be aware of all these steps. So, you've got your purpose, your strategy's clear, and some of these you may not need. So if you're giving your book away like as an incentive or a promotional item and you don't have any plans to sell it retail, then you don't need to do the ISBN number or the barcode or the Library of Congress catalog number. Okay, but what I do want you to understand though is self-publishing should not be confused with DIY. I think a lot of people have the impression that if they're self-publishing, then it's going to be inexpensive and there's not really a whole lot of money involved. Self-publishing does make everything more accessible to a lot more authors, but there's still fees and costs associated with it. The ISBN number certainly costs. If you're not, you need someone to format it for you, there's some fees when you upload and if you have to correct a file and that sort of thing. So you need to know that there's these types of things and there's going to be costs associated with it. Because remember, we're creating a book that represents us as an author or a business owner or a coach or a professional speaker, and we want it to be as professional and polished as possible. So it helps to start lining some of these things up while you're writing the book, especially editing, get an idea of who will do the formatting, how you're going to publish it, how you're going to sell it, promote it, marketing, that sort of thing. So I don't want to overwhelm you with the list, and we certainly don't have time to go into great detail with these, but I want you to know what's involved in publishing your own book. So it's difficult to say if there's one of these more important than the other. They all need to be part of that book success, but I will say that editing should never be skipped. You should tattoo that on your forehead or put it on your mirror in the morning or whatever, but please do not skip that step. So even if you have the strongest confidence in your writing ability, you need to get your work edited. And there are two types of editing: developmental or concept editing and line editing. So a developmental editor checks for flow, for cohesiveness, for clarity. They make sure if your message only about your topic or did you veer off track. They read it for voice to see if you're consistent from beginning to end. A developmental editor can make your writing much stronger by holding you to that concept and alignment of your book's purpose. A line editor is strictly like grammar and syntax. So line by line, they go through, they check grammar, spelling, syntax, like verb agreement and passive or active voice and such. Some developmental editors will correct that as they go too. But it doesn't hurt to have two editors review your work. I mean, these will be real live people who have eyes on your content. It's not running it through a software program and letting words like they pass for the type of thing. It's so important and really can erode your credibility so quickly when it looks like you just kind of hurried up, wrote it, and it's up to the reader to understand what you were trying to say. So I just stress again, do not skimp on editing. And once you've written your own material and you've been over and over it, our brains fill in the gaps, or we know what we were trying to say, but we may not be able to hear it, that it's not coming out clearly. So that's why you need someone else, a professional, not Aunt Marge who, reads books all the time or whatever. She's good as a beta reader, but not as an editor. Okay, you need a professional editor. And you need to start shopping around for one before your work is done, because they may be obligated to several books ahead of yours. So, they may take you on, but it might be months before they could get to it. So, start shopping around early. That way you're worked into the schedule. Polish it, make it as professional as possible. Credibility is such a precious commodity. And if your book doesn't reinforce your credibility, then you've just had a lot of work go down the drain. Okay, social media. I touched on this earlier in the strategy section. Know where your ideal reader hangs out. As you post updates on social media or you participate in some of these reader forums, you can provide excerpts of your book and ask for feedback. You may also find people that are willing to do what we call advanced praise for your book. So these are quotes or testimonials that are included in the printing of the book, talking about how good it is or whatever. And I have several techniques on this in my 5P Publishing for Profit program. It includes a template and samples of letters that you can use to ask for a review. It also helps generate that excitement, find an audience, and again, find someone that's similar to you. I'm not saying copy everything they do, but you can use some of their modeling and the way they interact with their readers, and pay very close attention to their audience and how they react and what they ask for. So that'll give you some great insight as to what's next. Okay, so we talked about overcoming our fear with strategy. So if you leave with anything today, I want you to leave with this. You don't have to be vulnerable or afraid or apprehensive about writing a book. Okay, it's not a matter of great inspiration or divine motivation. It just means that you are creating a business tool. And so when you have that clear purpose and your desired outcome, you've got the roadmap now to bring your book to fruition. I know when I wrote my first book, I did it all wrong. I felt inspired and I was convinced it would fulfill a need, and I just sat down and I started writing. And what I neglected was that groundwork that was necessary to really know who my ideal reader was and how I would reach them. So it was a book for young adults on getting organized. And while I thought I had my ideal reader in my mind, which at the time was my teenage son who needed all this organization, what I didn't know was how I would reach those kids that don't see the need and didn't know, and who would I be speaking to and how would I would reach them. So I kind of ended up with 100 copies or so in my closet for a long time. But had I done more work on the front end, it wouldn't have been so frustrating and disheartening when I got the book done. So remember, sharpen your axe, spend all the time necessary to refine the purpose and the desired outcome, do that avatar exercise, and fiercely question how the book fits into your overall business plan. We talked about how to have enough time, right? And part of that is by not doing your work 2 or 3 times when you're trying to just get the content down. And I know it's satisfying to call yourself an author and have your work out there that you created, but I also know it's not worth strained relationships or tension when those you love start to feel neglected. So you can fit writing a book into your busy life. You can fit it into running your business and being a wife or a mom or a caregiver or whatever title or titles you have. When you get in the weeds and you start to feel stuck, you go back to that book's purpose, check your alignment, and use the tools to get your content down. So whether you speak it, type it, hire it out, I don't want you sitting in front of a blank screen stuck thinking you can't get up until you write something. And then know what else you should be doing while writing that book. So remember our iceberg illustration. There are a lot of other activities around the book, so just be aware of them. Be aware of the investment level you have to work with and how you plan to use that book. How are you going to reach your readers? How will you promote it? How are you going to leverage it for other opportunities such as speaking or appearances or new client acquisition, and so on. And my bonus tip for you today is don't do it alone. Don't let one of these steps trip you up and keep you from getting the book produced or polished or published or promoted. You know the steps, but you don't have to do all the work. I've done a lot of editing and formatting for clients, and I coach many authors through these steps, and it really helps keep them moving and gets them to their goal of being a published author. And so one of the ways I do that is through my 5P Publishing for Profits program. So I help them prepare, which is our strategy, polish after we've written it, publish, promote, and pay off. So each module contains templates and exercises to kind of help you create and work your strategy. Today we spent a lot of time on one of the exercises, which is the purpose statement and the avatar. And that's a big part of that prepare segment. Polish, it gets into the mechanics of writing and the importance of working with an editor. Oh, we're getting ahead of myself. Okay. It gives you an understanding of how to write in an engaging manner, how to use lingo judiciously so that your reader connects, and how to use the type of writing that or avoid the type of writing that will instantly turn your readers off. Publish. This segment gives you a strong working knowledge of the publishing industry. It touches on query letters and the various types of self-publishing arrangements out there. This is a very interesting class since there are companies that promote themselves as a publisher, and then authors then kind of find out they're paying for everything, yet they don't own all the rights to the book as they would if they had just done self-publishing on their own. So we'll go over pros and cons of the pitfalls. Promote. Promotion is not just social media posts. So in this class, I cover the preprint promotion, guest posting, how to use excerpts of your book, asking for advanced praise and reviews. We'll cover creating a media kit for your book. I'll also give you the secrets to the formula people use to reach bestseller status on Amazon, and then payoff. So this class isn't about the bottom line in book sales, and it is great to sell a lot of copies, but we'll cover the best ways to use your book and your author status to grow your business. So along with the various ways that you can now repurpose your content and reach an even bigger audience. So each class builds on the steps so you'll have a clear idea of everything you can do to make your book a reality. Okay, so the next class begins July 18th. That's a Tuesday. It would be great to have you on live like you heard today, since we can answer questions. But I also understand it's tricky to always have a clear calendar every Tuesday afternoon. So the replays will always be available. You'll have access to that indefinitely if you join the class. And I openly share a lot of my mistakes so that you can avoid making them, and in a way that saves yourself wasted time and energy, but you're going to also be saving yourself some costly mistakes. Okay, I have a couple questions. One from Linda. So what if you've already written a book and it isn't doing well? Great question, Linda. If you've self-published this, you can kind of go back and rebuild your purpose and your avatar and help you define that target market. So it may be that you already align with it, but you didn't know how to directly connect with them. So if you can go back and find those readers on social media, in book groups, forums, and create a new publicity campaign to get out there and speak, use that book as your credibility piece. We can always talk more about this, but we're going to run out of time here. The other question, where do I buy ISBNs and how are they assigned? Okay, I'm glad you asked that. An ISBN should be purchased through one site only, which is called Bowker. So if you publish through someone else, such as CreateSpace on Amazon, that's their number and it shows them as the publisher, not you. Okay, thank you. Any other questions? I don't see anybody else's popped them up. Okay. All right, so as we close today, I'd love to have you join me for the 5P Publishing for Profits program. It will save you a ton of headaches and trial and error. I originally priced the course at $9.97, and then I started adding more content and a phone call consult, and I should have raised the price, but I had some great feedback on that, so I decided I just wanted to get this out there and help more people. So I revamped the program. It's repriced now at $4.97 as a summer special, especially if you have made it a goal to be an author in 2017. This is your chance to make it happen. It's already halfway through the year, so let's get her done. I will put the link in the chat box for you for the summer special price. I really hope you'll join me. If you sign up for the class today, I'd like to give you my report on the surprising costs of self-publishing. I talked a little bit about that. Self-publishing does not mean free publishing. It lists all the costs associated with it, what some of the industry terms are, and more. So it's very helpful. I've listed everything and approximate costs for steps that you'll need. Second, you'll receive my personal branding guide, and this helps streamline your business and author persona, everything from colors to fonts and more. It's very helpful when you're communicating with graphic designers or a marketing person, and it helps you narrow down and simplify all aspects of your visibility. So with so many things we do today to promote our businesses, the more you can streamline things, the better. And this way you have it all set. You know, what your colors, your fonts, your themes, the way everything looks online, and in your physical products too, such as, excuse me, flyers and business cards. Excuse me. And one more, I will add my Speak Like an Author guide. It goes into detail on how to add professional speaking to your skill set and where to find those speaking gigs, how to communicate with event planners and what they're looking for, and how you can leverage your author status. And finally, you'll be a member of my private Facebook group where you can ask questions directly with me. And last but not least, I'll include a 30-minute private strategy call with me so we can work on your book's purpose statement or any other sticking points that you have. So once again, the 5-module class, it begins July 18th. If you can't make it live, you will have access to the replays. You'll get the 30-minute strategy call or clarity call with me where we work on your book's purpose statement. You'll receive the personal branding guide, the Speak Like an Author ebook, which includes links to associations and organizations that are always in need of speakers. The private Facebook group too, so that we can get better acquainted and you can connect with some fellow authors. So just follow that link to reserve your spot. I really want you to feel confident that you're making the right choice. The class size is limited though, and the time to sign up is short. I mean, we start next Tuesday. I do have 2 ways for you to pay, either one payment of $497, or you can make 3 payments, credit card billing monthly of $174. All right, well, thank you so much. Our time has flown by. I know we covered a lot today. Please don't hesitate to post any other questions you might have on my Facebook page. That's ASAP Writing Services. And let's keep the conversation and the good book vibe energy going. Thanks so much and have a great day.